Hello, I'm the Reverend Patricia Hart, Developmental Minister of this First Unitarian Universalist Society of Burlington, Vermont, and I want to say welcome to all of you, members of the congregation and friends of the congregation and strangers and everyone from everywhere. You're here, it's Sunday, so we can worship. When we say worship, we mean it in the oldest sense of attending to all that is worthy, starting and ending with compassion and justice and acceptance and love and truth. This First Unitarian Universalist Society holds all of us to our shared Unitarian Universalist principles, our commitment to live knowing as if every person has worth and dignity, knowing deep in our hearts that we are all interconnected and interdependent. We are apart today in body, but we are united in our care for each other and for the whole world. Today, as every Sunday, I am filled with gratitude for all of you and for all of the people who have made this particular worship service possible. This week, that includes not only Erika and Margo, who are bringing us a story, and Sam for the music, and James for the video production, and also this week for the 5 wonderful people who came together to speak the opening words that you'll hear in just a minute. Judy, Brook, Memphis, Everest, Doug Facey, Kristin, Kany, and Melinda Lee. So, I'm hoping you have a light or something sacred to you that you can use as a chalice, and I actually have a favor to ask. If you want to take a picture of your chalice, whatever it is, and send it to me or to Christina or Mary or any staff member at the church, I would love to make a collage of those and we can show it to you next week. Grab your tea and your coffee and your toast and find a comfortable place to sit, and we will settle in to worship at a distance together. This morning's call to worship has been written by the Reverend Evan Carville-Zemer, who calls it Our Souls Speak Spring.
If we lived in another climate, our souls might speak other languages.
We might speak oasis or permafrost, dry season or monsoon, but our souls speak spring.
Our souls speak green shoots pushing through last year's leaves. Our souls speak flower buds stretching to sun.
Our souls speak mud puddle and nest building, damp earth and worm castings, tiny green leaves and frog choruses.
We speak spring because spring sings in us. We gather to nurture our faith in our own growing, our own courage to push through.
Our own blossoming and beauty, our own small part in the spring of this world.
Come, let us worship together. And let us get ready to light our chalice, this morning introduced by the words inspired by Dillman Baker Sorrells. On holy days, we recall the old stories, and we light a flame. For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom. For Easter, which teaches that love is our greatest gift and our greatest challenge. And for this gathering today, distanced and nevertheless all part of this sacred community committed to love and justice. We will light this flame. Would you speak together with me the words of chalice lighting? We kindle this chalice flame to remind ourselves of the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. And now we have a treat. A reflection, a story by Erika Reif, told by Erika Reif and Margo Whitcomb.
Welcome. Today is a special day, Easter. Easter is a Christian holy day, but it's also a day for colored eggs, bunnies, and pretty hats.
The word Easter comes from the name of an ancient European goddess of spring and the dawn, whose name is spelled Ostra or Istra. This is where we get the word east, for the direction of the rising sun.
Modern pagans generally accept the spelling Ostara. That goddess had her own holiday a few weeks ago on the equinox, and today we are going to share a story about her. Look, Margo, I drew a picture. What do you think? What do you see?
It looks like a bird.
But what about when I turn it this way?
Oh, now it looks like a bunny. I guess it's all in how you look at it.
Our story today is about a bird/bunny. Maybe you've heard it before. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, there was a goddess. Her name was Ostara. She was the goddess of springtime. She gave birth to the sun and helped it shine brighter every day in the sky. She was the bringer of warmth and color.
And one day, while she was going about her very important business, a little girl came to her. The little girl had found a small bird on the ground. The ground was still very cold because spring was not quite there yet. Ostara had not finished her work yet.
The little bird was injured and very cold. The little bird was dying. Please, the little girl pleaded with the goddess, please save the little bird.
The goddess was annoyed. Can't you see that I'm busy here? But the girl was persistent.
Please, it won't take much. Just help bring the bird back to life.
Not take much to bring a half-dead bird back to life? I mean, can you do that? The goddess had many important things to do, but she admired the girl's persistence and courage. So the goddess did the fastest magic she could. She quickly turned the bird into a rabbit and went back to work. The rabbit was stronger and could hop a long way and had a big fluffy coat that could keep her warm instead of light little feathers like before. So happily, the bird bunny hopped away.
They say that each springtime, just as the earth reawakens to a burgeoning new season of life-giving, life-affirming gifts, that bunny remembers its near death as a bird. It remembers the gift of life that Ostara gave it, and it remembers the little child who begged her to give it.
Each springtime, to return the favor, the bunny remembers that it was once a bird, and it lays eggs. It lays colorful, beautiful eggs to honor the colors of springtime that Ostara brings. It brings those eggs to children everywhere to honor the child who saved its life.
Now, I don't know if this is a true story in that it actually happened, but it is a powerful story because it's a story about transformation, about having to change in ways you never knew were possible in order to survive.
It's a story about the light of life returning. even when it seems like all hope has been lost.
And it's a story about gratitude expressed in generous love. And this picture reminds us that sometimes a thing can be transformed just by how you look at it.
Thanks for sharing this time with us.
Rest with me for a moment of reflection, meditation or prayer or just breathing. First, we will listen to some words and then call to mind joys and sorrows that you carry with you, and finish in some shared silence. The meditation this morning was written by the Reverend Teresa Soto. She calls it Broken Hallelujahs. Bring your broken hallelujahs here. Bring the large one which is beyond repair. Bring the small one that's too soft to share. Bring your broken hallelujah here. I know that people have told you that before you can give, you have to get yourself together. They overstated the value of perfection by a lot. Or they forgot. You are the gift. We all bring some broken things, songs and dreams and long-lost hopes. But here and together we reach within. As a community we begin anew. And from the pieces we will build something new. There is work only you can do. We wait for you. So take a moment, close your eyes if it helps. Take a moment, take a breath, and notice what you are feeling. Perhaps it is anxiety or fear. Perhaps you're feeling angry or confused. What do you miss? Who do you miss? What have you lost? And is there something more precious to you now than it ever was before? What do you dare to hope? Where are your hallelujahs, broken and beautiful? We are distant from one another and so deeply connected. Hold all of your joys and sorrows tenderly. They are your gifts. They are your teachers. Remember, too, that others are holding you right now in mind and heart and prayer. Let us be quiet together. Take a breath. Let us sing together. The hymn is The Lone Wild Bird. So it is the people who make this congregation possible. That's true every week. It is perhaps especially true now. There are different ways to give, to make your part of the offering that we're about to take up. The different ways are explained or will be on the screen. You can go to the website, you can go into your Realm account if you have an activated one, you can text a gift, you can get out your checkbook and mail it. I want to give you a small update on the pledge campaign, which is continuing. I hope that you all saw the video presentation that 6 of us got together and made just a few days ago. It was a first. It was a first, and it was fun. And it seems to have had an effect, because the pledging totals for next year's operating budget, they've gone up. At the end of this week, $348,000 has already been committed from 168 households in this congregation. That is 71% of the needed dollars for next year's budget, from way more than half of the congregation's households. So you're listening and you're watching, and I am so glad and so grateful. And I'm kind of hoping that those of you who haven't yet made your pledge, or who perhaps aren't in the habit of giving on Sundays, maybe you will be inspired as well. This week's offering will be shared as it is every week. This week the beneficiary is the Special Olympics of Vermont, which contributes to the physical, social, and psychological development of people with intellectual disabilities through participation in sports. This morning's offering will now be most gratefully received. Let us speak together the words of dedication that we say every week to mark the gathering of our many gifts. With gratitude, we dedicate these gifts in the service of our mission to inspire spiritual growth, care for each other and our community, seek truth, and act for justice. So, we may be in the middle of a pandemic, but we are still celebrating 2 big religious holidays happening this week. Happy Passover. Happy Easter. This year there is a poignancy and a strangeness to our celebrations. Families are not gathering, except perhaps on FaceTime or Zoom or Skype. But they're not, I hope they're not, at churches or synagogues or temples. And we are not in the meeting house. So with perhaps less focus on meals and family traditions, maybe that means there's a little more time and space to consider what we're supposed to be celebrating. Religion, in the best sense, is in the business of facilitating change, of transformation, of good overcoming cruelty and selfishness and indifference. I had a professor in seminary who said one day, it was pretty stunning, he said, any true religion needs to be strong enough to push back against the dominant culture, to question the status quo, to speak truth to structures of power that are so effective at benefiting the few at the expense of the many. Religion, whatever version or critique of divinity it might offer, searches for and holds up what is good and right. Real religion, for example, insists that it is not okay for people with money and privilege and white skin to control who gets to vote and how, who has access to health care, who lives, literally, who lives and who dies. Real religion declares that love and compassion and mercy and respect matter more than power and possessions, even more than safety. And the primary tool that religions have for saying all this stuff is stories. Now, not all religious stories are good ones, but both the Passover and Easter stories are right up there at illustrating how transformation happens and how it doesn't. Since the whole Christian Easter story is set in Jerusalem among a Jewish community that's gathered at Passover, we should start with the Passover story, which began this year on Wednesday night. The story is set in a long ago time when the Jews were enslaved in Egypt. They needed to be free, and Pharaoh would not let them go. A man called Moses, who is something of a Messiah figure, proclaims the possibility of freedom, and he works for years and years to lead the way. But as large a figure as Moses is, his power to actually make things happen is very limited, which is one of the wonderful things about this story. Moses cannot change Pharaoh's heart or mind, not with words alone. The argument only becomes convincing when Moses connects all the bad things that are happening in the land, the plagues, with divine displeasure, that God's people are enslaved. Finally, Pharaoh says, "Go," and Moses and the people don't hesitate. They leave, only taking themselves and very few possessions. There is no time for the bread to rise. They get across the Red Sea, leaving Pharaoh's army on the other side, which, of course, is when the trouble continues. It is lonely and scary and hungry out there in the desert, and there's no destination in sight. The people who are the real carriers of this story aren't always happy with this freedom, which is so uncomfortable and so unfamiliar to them. Moses doesn't make it to the promised land. The people do. And though that story has been corrupted, the core message that freedom is possible stays. The teaching that we need also to unlearn the habits of slavery, unlearn our ways of pretending that injustice doesn't matter, that it's not up to us. It is up to us because we're meant to be free. And there is lots of risk in freedom. That story, as they say, preaches. So, more than 13 centuries pass, Once again, or still, it is a time of profound inequity and oppression, and a Messiah comes to bring transformation. Though he looks, this one, more like a rabble-rouser than a king, and then he dies. A failure before anything happens. But the story, of course, doesn't end there. Death turns into resurrection, and the followers, the carriers of the story, their experience of Jesus' death and resurrection is frankly not very comforting. I was in seminary before I paid attention to what the story says about the disciples. They're amazed, they're also confused, they're terrified. The ones who weren't there keep asking the ones who were what they actually saw, what people said. There was a lot of doubting, not just Thomas. Even the ones who were hopeful had no idea what to think, much less what they were supposed to do. My favorite part of the Bible story is the episode on the road to Emmaus. It's in the Gospel of Luke. 2 disciples are walking along the road on that same day that the tomb has been found empty, and a man joins them, walking with them, asks what they're talking about. They can't believe how out of it he is. Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place, they ask, about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word, who was handed over to be condemned and crucified. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. And it is now the 3rd day since these things took place, and some women of our group were at the tomb early this morning. And when they did not find his body, they came back and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but we did not see him. The stranger, of course, was Jesus, and they don't recognize him. Not until they sit down together to eat do they realize who he is. He was right there, and they didn't know it. The Easter story begins during Jesus' life, but mostly it happens afterward. It's mostly accomplished by a ragtag bunch of his followers who disagree about what's true and necessary, who don't always even like each other very much, and who lose out in the end, all of them, to the structures of power that are already in place. But before they disappear, they tell their story, the one they learned from Jesus, which is the story of a better way to live. And they practice that better way too, as well as they know how, so that communities form around the simple conviction that all people are valuable and loved by God. It's a powerful story. Even though it's been corrupted, the core of it is still alive today, still changing people, still bringing hope and courage and even joy. Invitations to transformation are often scary. They are always marked by loss and doubt. The destination is never clear because we've never been there before. The stories tell us that. And also how important it is to sing and to find beauty and joy along the way, to direct our energy toward the vision, toward the dream, to stay close to one another even when, perhaps especially when, we are apart. So may it be. So may it blessed be. Let us extinguish our chalice. Will you say the words with me? We extinguish this chalice flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with the world until we are together again. The benediction today is from Laura Kelly Fanucci. When this is over, may we never again take for granted a handshake with a stranger, full shelves at the store, conversations with neighbors, a crowded theater, Friday night out, the taste of communion, a routine checkup, the school rush each morning, coffee with a friend, the stadium roaring, each deep breath, a boring Tuesday, life itself. When this ends, may we find that we have become more like the people we wanted to be, we were called to be, we hoped to be. And may we stay that way, better for each other because of the worst. Go in peace.
Thank you.